Hello everyone, my name is Patrick DeBerry and this is my presentation on POP3S and SMTPS. We will be going over what these two protocols are, how they work, and some common commands, and then how they can be better protected when they are utilized. So first up we have Post Office Protocol Secure. It operates as a regular POP3 protocol, but over a secure sockets layer to encrypt traffic in transmission. POP3 allows clients to retrieve messages from email servers. It operates on port 995. And one security layer that already exists for even the standard version of this protocol is the requirement of a username and password. However, since regularly it would be unencrypted and therefore it is recognized, the regular version is recognized as insecure. Of course, POP3S solves this problem by using SSL, so the username and password will be encrypted. So regular POP3 operates on port 110. But we will be using POP3 Secure, which will be on port 995. So it works by the server holds emails in a text file, and each new email is appended to the bottom of the file. The client gives a username and password and then downloads emails locally on their machine. The server will then delete those emails from the text file. The problem is username and passwords are sent to servers in plain text using the regular POP3 version. So it can still be used in intranets within an organization, but it's usually just recognized as unsecure, and it's just safer to use POP3S. So to use POP3, open the command line interface and type the command telnet followed by your server name or server IP address and then the port. So for regular POP3 it would be 110, and again for POP3S it would be 995. The server will then give a reply that either starts with a plus OK or minus fail. So the client, once they get an OK, the client then can authenticate and emails can be downloaded locally again on their machine. This kind of works like going to the post office to pick up some mail and you give them your ID. It's kind of the same thing happening here, just with a computer giving them a username and password. So here are some common commands for POP3. Nothing too complex. They're pretty straightforward. So first off, stat is the command that shows the number of messages and the byte size currently of the text file on the server. List shows messages individually and each of their size, their byte size. Retrieve retrieves an individual message. Delete obviously deletes an individual message, although you can configure the server to not delete automatically once the emails have been downloaded. Reset obviously restarts a session and restores all deleted messages. Top retrieves part of a message. Now, not all mail servers are compatible with top, but if they are, can kind of be useful just to get a few lines. And then finally quits the session entirely. Alright, so here we have Dovecot. Dovecot is the software that we are going to be using in order to use POP3 and IMAP, which we will be responsible for later. Dovecot is an open source software that exists on the Linux server, and it is used again for POP3 and IMAP. Dovecot is a Linux only, and to install you just run this command right here, sudo apt install dovecot imapd dovecot pop3d, and that will install both. the IMAP daemon, and the POP3 daemon. And to configure the file, it will automatically be placed under the directory /etc/dovecot/dovecot.config. And then after you configure the config file, you will need to change your IP tables and add a rule sudo IP tables append input -p TCP and then the port for SSL, or the secure version of POP3 on 995 -m contract -CT state new established -j accept. And then finally, you will need to save the IP tables rule with the persistent command. Alright, so now we move on to SMTP. It stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Before we get into SMTPS, we will just take a look at how the regular version runs, and then we'll see what the secure version does differently. The regular version just operates on port 25, and like POP3 was used to retrieve mail, SMTP is used to send mail, which makes it a push protocol. That means that the client pushes the data to a server, and then the server holds it for storage and keeps it so that it can be retrieved later by another client. There are two different model types for SMTP. One is end-to-end and the other is called store and forward. End-to-end is used more for communication between different organizations over the internet, while store and forward is used within one organization inside their intranet. So the user will use a user agent like Outlook and send mail to a mail transfer agent. The user mail transfer agent will then send that mail to the server mail transfer agent, where it will wait to be retrieved by the server user agent. Therefore, both a user agent and a MTA are required for the user side and the server side as well. So that brings us to Simple Mail Transfer Protocol Secure. This is just simply the secure version of SMTP. Just like HTTPS improves on HTTP, or POP3S improves on POP3, any protocol you can think of, usually they just add a secure sockets layer, and this one does the same thing. It adds an SSL, uses public key encryption to make sure that that data is encrypted and can't be read in plain text when sent over the internet. And this one operates on port 465. So here are some common commands associated with SMTP. Hello starts the convo and identifies the server. Mail from, sender provides the source address, and recipient to, this identifies the receiver. Size shows the size of the message. Data begins the data transfer. Server verifies this email address. And turn switches the role of the client and the server. That's probably the trickiest command. So the roles actually switch, and the client becomes a server, server becomes the client. And then finally, authentication. The client authenticates to the server with their username and password. Alright, so here's just some more commands associated with SMTP. You got reset, help, and quit. These are pretty straightforward. For reset, the ongoing email transmission will be terminated and closed. Help will give you more information, and quit will quit the convo entirely. So in this class that this presentation is for, we will set up SMTPS for both our Linux and Windows servers. So we're going to use postfix for Linux, and we're going to use IIS for Windows. So therefore, we will be configuring SMTPS through both Windows IIS and Linux Postfix. Postfix is an open source mail transfer agent software, and to install Postfix, you can just run the standard install command, the sudo apt install postfix, and then it's going to ask you a series of questions. So you'll go through them, answer all the prompts, and then even if you feel like you answered them wrong or want to change your answers for any reason, you can always readjust the settings and answer them again through the sudo dpackage-reconfigure postfix command. So to configure postfix, we must always edit the config file just like anything else. It will be placed under the /etc/postfix/main.config, and then you can edit that running this sudo nano in front of it. And when you do that, it is going to be very important that you add this variable, this init underscore interfaces. You're going to want to set that to a loopback only or local host. This will ensure that your server does not become an open relay, which means that anyone can send mail from your server. So by adding this variable, you can be sure that only your server will be sending mail, that only you can do it. And then finally, restart postfix by the sudo service postfix restart command, and then that will save everything you've done. So now for IIS, we will be using IIS again on the Windows server, and to install, just open the server manager and then click add a role-based feature, and then you're going to skip a couple times till you get to the select a new feature window, and then you're going to scroll through and select the SMTP server feature and then hit install. And then once that's finished, you can configure it under the Tools tab on the Server Manager homepage, and then go to IIS Manager 6.0. There's which is very important because there's the IIS Manager, the regular one, and then there's another choice that's the 6.0, and you'll need to do the 6.0 to see your SMTP server. And then once you found it, just right click it and then go to properties, and then you'll see a bunch of tabs. The main one you're gonna be concerned about is the access tab. Now under the access tab, you'll have three options: authentication, connections, and relay. The first one, authentication, under this you're gonna want to make sure that you check the anonymous access and then require TLS. This will ensure that you're running the secure version of SMTP and not the unsecure version where it's going to send username and passwords in plain text everywhere on the internet for people to read. And then once you finish that, go to connections, select only list below, then add, and then enter this IP address. So just like we did in postfix with the loopback address or the local host, this is that IP address, the 127.0.0.1. This is something that every computer uses as their loopback address, their local host address. Again, that will ensure that your server does not become an open relay. Which brings us to relay, which you're going to do the same thing there, just enter the loopback address 127.0.0.1. Alright, so now we move into the hardening recommendations. For POP3S, the best recommendation I have is to use strong ciphers. This can be done by editing the first line of the SSL config file. There you'll see something like this line under for Ubuntu I have here, something like SSL cipher suite, and then all the encryption algorithms. Encryption is only as good as its ciphers, so a weak cipher will defeat the entire purpose of encryption, and SMTPS is still going to be just as weak as its predecessor, SMTP. So use strong ciphers, and then you can also tell it to use different versions of different encryptions like TLS version 1.3 and 1.2. You can add a minus sign to say don't use those. You can do whatever. Alright, so for the hardening rule for SMTPS, we've already touched on this. The making sure that you're using the 127.0.0.1 as the IP address, and in the connection and relay tab for IIS, and then that variable for postfix. This is extremely important because if you're an open relay, you're not secure. Alright, lastly, to harden postfix, I recommend you pair it with something called Spam Assassin. It's an antivirus software that can detect spam, viruses, and banned content. And then it can also even redirect mail, which is important when communicating with other computers that may not be using secure protocols. So you can automatically, if someone pushes email to your server, you can automatically redirect a regular SMTP protocol to SMTPS and force them to use SSL. Alright, so here's my references. This is my last slide. Check them out if you have any questions or need any more information. And as always, feel free to comment. I look forward to reading them, and have a great day.